Hey everyone, I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, connoisseur of donuts, and today we'll be designing a custom beverage can label together for this Illustrator marketing challenge. You'll definitely want to download today's starter file, which can be found below this video, since I've put together a template for you to use. Once you've downloaded and opened the starter file in Illustrator, this is what you're going to see. I've got some notes off to the side and, as usual, about the tools we're going to be using, some tips and tricks for you to work along with me, as well as a couple of artboards. So these artboards are these white areas on our Illustrator canvas, two separate ones. We've got a flat can label template over here, and then we've got this photo that we're going to be using for our mockup from Adobe Stock. So on this can label template that I set up, we've got a front view, we've got a back view, and we've got like this version that we're going to use when we make the mockup. It'll be all clear when we get there. So on the back here, I've gone ahead and I've added some important information that you typically want to add to a can. It's got the nutrition facts, we've got the recycling information, the barcode, and the ingredients. Obviously, none of this is real, it's all just kind of placeholder. The idea is just that this is for designing purposes, so you can see how much space this is going to occupy, and you can visualize what your design might look like with all of that kind of included. If you want to learn a little bit more about this process, what kind of information you should put on your can, I've got a link in your resources here if you want to check it out that goes into a little bit more depth about this if you wanted to kind of do it on your own, essentially, and not use my template. So to get started, we're going to need, the thing we're going to be focusing on, obviously, is going to be the front of the can. And the most important thing there is going to be the name of the product. It's going to be, the flavor. It's going to be, any kind of information you want the consumer to see kind of on the shelf. So we're going to need to hop over on our first stop to fonts.adobe.com. That's also going to be, I've got links for those in your resources as well. Once we hop over there, I'm just going to click on Browse All to get started. And now for today, I think I want to keep it very, on theme with the holidays, sort of festive, cranberry, maybe ginger. I mean, really, it's up to you, whatever you kind of think of this time of year. But that being said, I'm going to click on the holidays tag up here at the top, and that's going to show us sort of fonts that have a holiday look and feel to them. That's going to, help us kind of identify our product as, that sort of a thing, a seasonal type of a thing. So up here at the top, once I've picked my tag, I do like to sort by new. Personal preference, you don't have to. I just like to take a look and see what kind of new stuff they've added to Adobe Fonts. And when I'm looking at fonts, I'm going to pick something for that's going to be more of a display style font. That's going to be for our product name. It's going to look really great at large, and it's going to have a little bit maybe more character to it. And then for my secondary font for things like the flavor, smaller text on the can, I'm going to pick a secondary font that's a little bit easier to read, that maybe has a little bit less character to it, but still kind of pairs nicely with the kind of initial font, if that kind of helps you in your decision-making process. And I'm just going to go right off the bat. I think this one's really interesting. The snow could be fun if you were going for, like, I don't know, a really holiday themed thing, a Christmas themed thing. I'm gonna go with this one here, this tuppence, I think that's how it's pronounced, and I'm going with pence. One right after the other, because I do think these two have very similar characteristics to them, and are gonna pair nicely together. We'll see what they look like in context. So we've got some fonts picked. Now, before we go back and add our labels, I am going to hop over as well to Adobe Color, and that's going to be at color.adobe.com. And instead of starting here in our color wheel today, we're actually going to take a look at the Explore tab. And in the Explore tab, this can be a really handy way to kind of find some color palettes that are inspired by the thing that you want to create. So we know that we want to create a cranberry based drink, and this could also be, you can do cranberry soda or sparkling water. You could also do like a beer can if you wanted to. I know that somebody in the community has been doing like a beer brand. Kevin's been doing a beer brand, so this could be a great challenge for that. The other thing I want to point out in the search bar is up at the top in this little drop down. You'll notice a little drop down next to your search and a little plus. In this drop down, you're going to find all of your current Adobe libraries, so you're going to want to navigate to wherever you want to save that to. I'm just pointing this out now because it's in line with the search bar, so it's easier to do that kind of at the beginning than to try and go back and sort it out after the fact. So make sure you know which library you're saving it to. And a purpose asking which font did I select. So I've still got that open. I selected this Pence down here to get started. This is going to be a nice display font. It's got some fun character to it. And Tuppence. So Tuppence and Pence. Kind of funny that they kind of go together and they're kind of next to each other here. So there you go. That helps at all. Okay, back over here. I'm just going to go ahead and just hit search. Oh, if you don't have a library, click on this little plus and you can go ahead and type a library, give it a name. Something like, we'll just call this cranberry can. And hit create, and that's going to create a library for us if we want to. And you'll notice that it's going to automatically select that for you. So you can go ahead and you can add some colors to that. So the reason that we're going ahead and doing that is because when we hop back into Illustrator, we're going to be able to easily find our colors that we save. Now, you don't have to use a library if you don't want to. You can also go, and if you hover over these, you have the option to add to a library, or you can download as a JPEG. If you'd rather download your colors and maybe import them into Illustrator that way, using the eyedropper tool, you can go ahead and do that. Now, a couple of tips when picking colors out. Pick something that's got some good values. And a good variation of hues if that's important to you. This one would work nicely. It doesn't have a lot of hues, but it does have some nice value differences. That's going to help you pick colors that contrast with each other when you're putting together your label. We want to make sure that our text stands out really nicely against our background. And then you can go ahead, you can see it. I added that to my library. And then, you see some of these. This one has a little bit more variation in terms of hues. I do worry about the colors being very similar in terms of values, but we can go ahead and add that one. And you can just go down the line here and add any that you feel like might work for your design. I did go ahead and I picked out some earlier and added them to my Illustrator Challenge library that I think I'm going to work with here, but they all were from the same search, and I just wanted to show you kind of like how I go about picking these colors. If you did want to check your color contrast, if you click into a color theme here, you can go to, let me see if I can find it. Oh, maybe not. There used to be a way to head over to check the color contrast, but I'm not able to find it in here. Oh, you know what? I think you have to go over to libraries to do that. And you can grab your color palette from here. And if I select this, oh, there we go, edit for accessibility. And here you can go into your contrast checker if you wanted to. Now we're in color blindness. We'll go to color contrast checker. And that's one way you can check your contrast. So anyways, we're getting a little bit into the weeds. I'm going to hop back over to Illustrator and I'm going to open up the libraries panel. If you don't have your libraries panel open, you can find it under window. All of your panels can be found in the window drop down here. And Christelle's saying cherries. Yeah, I do think this is also would be a fun cherry themed design. And any of the ones that have check marks next to them, you can see here libraries has a check next to it. That means it's currently open. So if you want to open any of them, you can find them there. And you're going to want to navigate to the library that you're currently working with. So I've got you're using your cranberry can set of colors, or in this case, I'm using the Illustrator Challenge library here. Now, if you want to add these to your swatches over here, let's pop back over for a sec. Your swatches window here, so you can work with them very easily in Illustrator, and we're going to need to add them to our swatches panel. You can right-click on the color palette that you want to work with, and you're going to want to choose this second option here in the drop-down menu. The first one is add color to swatches. That's only going to add one individual color, whichever you have kind of like hovered over. If you add theme, it's going to add them all at once. So we're going to want to add our theme to swatches. And when we do that, it's a little bit hard to see, but it did add that as a folder. Let's pull this down. So it's very easy to tell which ones are in that theme because it kind of groups them all together for us. So it's a really easy little handy way to keep your colors kind of organized. All of those themes are going to be in those individual folders. All right, so we've got our colors, we've got our fonts. Now we're ready to kind of start designing. Now, a couple things here. We've got the front, we've got the back of the can. So I'm going to add a background, and then I'm going to add sort of a focal point, some kind of focus on my design to highlight the product name. It's kind of important when you're looking on a shelf. So we're going to start with the background here. And I can add a background with a really cool trick using to create a gradient. So back, taking a look at my swatches here, when I click on each of my individual swatches, you'll notice that I get this little highlight box around them. And if I select multiple, so I click on the first one and hold down Shift, I can start to select multiple colors all at once. So I'm going to pick these two blues, holding down Shift to select both of them, so they're both highlighted. And then in my swatches menu over here, in the little drop-down menu, if I click on that, you'll notice sort of like the second group down, there's something called Create Gradient. And if I click on that, it's going to create a gradient for me using those colors and automatically open my gradient panel for me. This is super handy if you're making a gradient that has multiple colors. So if we go over here and I just kind of show you really quickly, we choose Create Gradient. It creates color stops for all of those colors, and they're all perfectly kind of spaced out and already kind of set up for you. So it's a really, really handy way to go about making gradients from color swatches without having to kind of manually add all those colors by hand. All right, so we've got our gradient kind of set up here. In order to add it to my can, so I've got these gray kind of squares here for rectangles. They're just kind of placeholders. They're a little bit easier for you to see instead of white, but they're meant to be like the background color of our label, right? Now I'm gonna hit this little plus down here under swatches. That's gonna add my gradient as a gradient swatch. So I'm gonna hit plus. It's gonna ask me if I want to name it. I would name it something like blue gradient or something, you know, whatever you want. And then I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to add it up here in line with the rest of my colors as a gradient swatch. So now, when I click on these gray squares, just using the selection tool and holding Shift, I can apply my gradient to my background fills, just like that. There is one thing I might want to do in this case. Right now, my gradient is sort of going from left to right. It's going, across. I want it to go up and down, sort of vertically. So since I already have my gradient panel open, you could do this with the gradient tool and just drag to create a vertical gradient. I'm just going to type in 90, and that's going to rotate that 90 degrees to be vertical for us. So that's just going to wrap nicely around the can, perfectly. Okay, so like I said, we want this to be cranberry flavored. So when I'm designing, I like to think about a way to kind of like highlight the label on this, create an area for our text, and also like to be a little bit playful with things that relate back to the product itself. In this case, cranberries are circular berries. So I'm going to switch in my shape tools, holding down on whichever one is active, in this case the rectangle tool, and switch to the ellipse tool. Now I do have smart guides on. Under view smart guides, you can see that little check mark again indicates that something is active. That's going to help me in this case line up my circle so that it can be created from the center. Now you can see if I drag normally, it's just going to create from that point that I clicked, that initial point. If I want to drag out from the center, I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, and now I can drag out a circle from the center. If I want to constrain that circle to be a perfect circle, like a little cranberry, I'm going to hold down Shift as well. And that's going to create a nice area for my design to live. So I'm going to use that same gradient trick again, clicking on my darker sort of maroon color and my lighter pink, holding down Shift, and going to Create Gradient, and that's going to create a cool gradient for us. Again, we're going to want to change that value under the angle to 90 to create a vertical gradient instead. All right, now let's start to add our text so we can start to see how this design looks in action. So I'm going to switch to the Type tool. We've got a couple of things coming through the chat. Hungry Head is an option. You were looking for pretzels for the name of the font. Yeah, Pretz. Let me know in the chat. We've got a live chat on Behance and on Adobe Live on the YouTube channel. Let me know if you have any suggestions for our product name or flavor suggestions. You can also ask questions, any questions you have so far. And also, if you are watching the replay on YouTube, you can leave comments, so if you have any questions later. So clicking once to create some point text, it is a little small, so I'm going to switch to the selection tool and drag to make it larger. Again, dragging just makes your text all kinds of squishy. So I'm going to hold down Shift so that it constrains it and makes it larger without getting squished and squashed. And then we're going to go, actually I'm going to do this in the contextual toolbar. It's a little bit easier to see. I can change the font in the contextual toolbar just clicking into this character window. It's also at the top in the control bar. And I think it was Pence. I've said it so many times now. There we go, Pence. I don't have any names yet for the product, so I'm just going to go with, we're just going to go with Joy. Joy. Seems like a good product name, right? And now I can kind of put it on my can. If you're having trouble lining it up, two things. We can go to our paragraph alignment options and change our text to be center aligned. And then we can also start to align. That'll make it easier to you can see. It's a little bit hard to see. But you can see that snapping into place. But if you click and hold shift on both your shape and your text, and then you click on the shape again, you'll get it to highlight with this kind of darker red color here. And then I'm gonna hit this horizontal align center, and that's gonna align my text for me. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't love this. Ruby for the surname. Ooh, okay, we'll do Ruby. Thank you, Penny. Ruby, I kind of love that. I kind of love it in this font too, to be honest with you. Now that I see it all together, maybe we'll keep it for now. But I think the layout is kind of lacking. So let's kind of play around with this a little bit. I think it's a little bit boring. So we're going to try a different kind of layout here. We could still use the shape to kind of like point to our type, but we're going to point to it in a different way. So we're going to try something. So looking at the ellipse tool, if you didn't know this, the ellipse tool is very similar to actually your star tool and your polygon tool, and that it has some little special features about it. One of which is this little, if I zoom in, this little target here. You may not have ever noticed this before, and this actually makes a little wedge for you. I think it's called a pie, technically, but as you drag this around, you can kind of create a half circle or a quarter circle or whatever you're kind of after here, right? But holding down shift in this case doesn't actually do anything. So it's hard to get kind of like a perfect alignment, but up in our contextual toolbar, we do have a little similar looking pie shape there, right? So if we click on this, we can actually open this up and we can type in 180 degrees to get a perfectly split in half circle. Now we can drag this shape up using Smart Guides and place it at the top, and we know that this is going to be perfectly aligned. And isn't going to have any overhang. Let me just kind of move this out of the way. And then we can create the bottom as well. I'm just going to go up to Object, Transform, Reflect. If we choose vertical, it's not going to be what we want. So we want to choose horizontal. You can get like a preview. I've got preview checked on of what that's going to look like. And if I just hit OK, it's just going to flip my shape. So, make sure you hit this copy button. If you hit this copy button, now you can see I've got 2 copies of my shape and I can drag it down. I can kind of frame my text out here. And this is pretty cool. I really like this font choice here, Penny. And we can change this to be our kind of darker color here as well. And I think Penny suggested Ruby and then Joy as well. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this text. I'm going to type in Joy. We'll scale this down a little bit. So you could think of the product name as being kind of like a secondary brand. I would recommend for something like this that I don't want to make it that small. Here, let's scale this down, and then I'm going to scale this type up a bit more. Something like that, right? For something like this, I would recommend adding to the top here your primary brand. So if you had, this was, let's go, actually, you know what? I'm going to make these both the same size. And then we'll drag this down a little bit so there's a slight overlap. Kind of like the way that looks. Yeah. All right. So I would put the brand, the parent brand up here, and you could think of this as like a secondary brand for just this, soda. And now the third step here, and I think this was from Christelle, was asking this to be cherry instead of cranberry, which is fine. I'm just going to click to make some more point type here. And then under pence, we're going to type in our second font, which was pence. There we go. And for that, I'm going to just put in, let's put in winter cherry as our flavor. Winter cheer would also be a cute flavor name. That was an accidental spelling situation there, but I think it would be a cool name too. I'm going to change this to be the lighter blue so it stands out. Now, I'm establishing some hierarchy here. This is important. The primary name of the product is going to be the largest. The flavor is going to be slightly smaller. And then holding down Alt or Option, I'm going to drag out some type again, and I'm going to type in the size. So in this case, our can, according to the nutrition facts, which are not real, but we can pretend, it's 12 ounces. And we're going to scale that down as well, since that's also tertiary information. So we've established our hierarchy. How do we want the viewer to read this product? We want them to read the name, we want them to read the flavor, we want them to read the can size, sort of last, as less important. Feel free to keep going with this. I do want to make sure that we have time to get to our mock-up. Like I said, you could put like a cute little, like if you had came up with like a logo mark or a brand for the overall parent company for this product, you know, you could add some details to make this look like a cherry, some leaves, a stem or something like that. You could add like a wreath around this to fit with the kind of seasonal theme to go around and carry the circle. Tons of different options. Oh, clever, you're late to the party. Yay, weird drink. I haven't missed the whole session. Well, you'll have to watch the replay. We were hoping that you would be here to give us some name suggestions. But, so you'll notice I have this blank rectangle over here. This is just placeholder to remind you that we need to make a copy of just our label to create our mock-up. So over here, I'm going to drag to select my entire can design, and then I'm going to hit Command or Control G to make a group. I'm going to delete that placeholder. It's just there, so you know, as a reminder. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, and I'm going to hold down Shift since it's going to be easier to drag it out. If you don't, your design's going to kind of move around a little bit. It's not really important since this is a placeholder, but if you wanted to keep everything spaced out nicely, you can hold down Shift. Now, to put this on our mock-up, and this is kind of important, so I'm going to pull this layers panel out so it's easier for you to see. To put this on our mock-up, like a lot of things in Illustrator, like clipping masks, you know, if you want to do something with artwork, it all has to be on the same layer together. And currently, I've had you working on the Your Art layer, you know, designing our labels. Our mock-up is going to be on a separate layer. So to get that over to our separate layer, if I zoom in here, you'll notice when I select just the label, I get a little tiny square. And when I select the whole layer by clicking on this circle, I get a larger square. It's a little bit hard to see, but that little square is the like selection indicator. So when you have everything selected on the layer, it's bigger. When you only have one thing selected, it's a little bit smaller. And you can actually click on and interact with that little selection square. So if I click on that and I drag it down, you'll see that it highlights when it reaches my mockup layer, and I will release. And when we open up our mockup layer now, we can see that our label has actually moved to our mockup layer. So now they're both on the same layer. So now if we drag this over top of our image, you can see they're together, they're on the same layer. So we can interact with them and create our mockup. So just a little note there, they need to be together. Now, a couple of pro tips about making a mockup before we go ahead and commit. Things that I like to do, I like to drag the artwork to be over top of the image, exactly where I want it to go on my mockup. Well, not exactly, but approximately. That's really important if you have a mockup photo. This is just an Adobe stock photo, by the way. So if you want to use a different can, you could. The image over top of the place that you want it to be, especially important if you have other items in the scene. So if you've got a mockup that maybe has like leaves in the background or something, right? You don't want it to accidentally map the artwork to the leaf, right? So I like to just kind of place it over there from the beginning, so that mockup, it kind of helps mockup to, you know, line it up. The other thing that I like to do is I like to scale it up. So I'm going to scale this up so it covers the full area of my can. That's just, again, it's going to help me when I make the mockup by making it large enough so I don't have to spend a lot of time scaling and manipulating things. So just make it up, make it larger, and place it over top before we begin. And there's a couple ways you can make a mock-up. I'm just going to use, well, you could drag to select, you know, the can image and the label, or you can just, like I said, click on the little circle in the layer panel. In this case, everything on the layer is going to be on the mock-up can, so we can just select everything. And we can either click on in the contextual toolbar, we can just click Create Mockup right from there. You can also go to Object, Mockup, Create Mockup, or you can actually open up the mockup window. And we'll take a look at that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Create Mockup, and it's going to, you know, assess my design and create it for me. The thing about the mockup panel is you can actually choose from some different Adobe stock sets. So if you wanted to see your design, you didn't really have a mockup in mind, but you wanted to see it on like business cards or apparel, you can see from this drop down here, you can go ahead and pick that right from the beginning. And it's actually going to give you a preview of what your design looks like on all of those different, you know, applications. Now I can see here that Mockup did its best, but I do need to make this a little bit wider. So it creates this little like circle widget for you. And if you hover over in different spots, you can rotate it around if you want to. You can go ahead and you can stretch it if you wanted to, much like everything else. If you hold down Shift, it's going to scale it up and constrain the proportions. In this case, it does look like it stretched it a little bit vertically, so I'm going to correct for that, and I'm just going to stretch it back a little bit wide to get an idea. Now you can see there is some cleanup that I'd probably want to do along the bottom edge of this can, but this is really just to kind of give you an idea of what this is going to look like on a potential design. So this is a great way to share with clients if you wanted to just kind of do a proof of concept for what your design might look like once you've got something put together. Speaking of sharing once you've got something put together, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to export this out as a JPEG or a PNG by going to export for screens. And you can see I've got both of my artboards selected. I want to export the mockup and my label design. And then from the format, if you're sharing this with our Discord, you're going to want to pick PNG or JPEG. I'm just going to pick PNG, and make sure you know where you save it to. We're just going to pick the desktop. I'm going to hit choose and export. Once our design is exported out here, you can navigate to our Illustrator Discord and specifically the DCC feedback channel under Daily Creative Challenges, and you can just drag those in. And I'm going to let people know what these were for. November Challenge 2. Just let everybody know and hit enter, and that's going to share them. And I can get feedback from everybody in the Discord, or just show everybody what I worked on, show it off. If you don't feel comfortable sharing it in Discord, you can also share it on social, tagging Adobe Live or tagging me. All right, let's switch back to my camera. Thank you for working along with me for an Illustrator marketing challenge. I hope you had fun making this can label. We went over creating gradients in a really cool way, the type tool, working with Adobe Fonts and Adobe Color, and the ellipse tool. We're live once a week on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Pacific on Behance and on the Adobe Live YouTube channel. Stay here for more. The Photoshop challenge is up next, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.